Welcome to sqlite3. In this introductory video, we'll see the features of sqlite3 and dig in to find out why sqlite3 would be a great fit for your upcoming projects. For starters, sqlite3 is free. There is no restrictions for commercial usage. So you don't have to pay any sort of a licensing fee. Say if you're using a database like Oracle, you would have to pay the licensing fee for it. sqlite3, on the other hand, is totally free. sqlite3 runs in embedded mode, so there is no need for additional server or special hardware to run your sqlite3 instance. This is one of the primary reasons why mobile phones prefer sqlite3. Supports indexing, table joins, triggers, views, and windowing functions. To jog your memories, indexing helps speed up query lookups. Table joins are those constructs that let you combine multiple tables to arrive at your results. Trigger is a user-defined function that gets invoked based on a certain criteria, say during an insert or an update or delete. View is a named SQLite query. Instead of writing long queries, you can write smaller queries to make your productivity higher. Windowing functions are related to retrieving and grouping rows of data. We'll see all of these in great detail in later sections. ACID stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. Since sqlite3 is ACID friendly, there's support for transactions. For those of you wondering if it can handle huge amounts of data, turns out sqlite3 does an awesome job at it. It supports a lot of data. For example, the maximum string or blob length supported is 2 power 31 minus 1. String stands for a bunch of characters that are enclosed within quotes. So these are things like your name or your address. Blob stands for binary large object. Things like your photograph or your MP3s, videos are binary objects, and that's what blob stands for, binary large object. The maximum number of columns per table defaults to 2000 and can be set to a maximum of 32,767. Why the default of 2000? This is based on common usage scenarios, and it comes along with the distribution of sqlite3. Once you change the configuration and say you compile it again, then this limit can be raised all the way up to 32,767. A word of note, I've never found a reason to tune it all the way up to 32,767. The maximum length of a SQL statement defaults to 1,000,000. You can of course raise it all the way up to 1,000,000,000. I don't know why you would want to do that, but hey, it's always there. The maximum number of tables in a join is 64. So you can perform a 64-way join. The maximum number of rows in a table is 10 power 13. That's a huge number. And here comes the next point related to it. The maximum database size is 140 terabytes. So if you can find a 140 terabyte disk, or you find a way to store it in one section, you're good to go. Mobile phones, as we all know, are way smaller in the storage size. They're in a couple of gigabytes. The maximum number of tables is about 2 billion plus. I don't know why you would want to again have so many tables, but it's there for you anyways. And please take my word on this one. The ecosystem of libraries, as far as JavaScript, Java, and Python are concerned, is amazing. Even Swift is kind of good. The command line interface, the shell, the sqlite3 shell, is also very robust. So these are some of the positive aspects for which you might want to pick sqlite3 for your upcoming project. Having seen why you want to use sqlite3, let's now see where sqlite3 is widely used. Mobile phones like Android and iOS make use of sqlite3. Even your contacts application makes use of sqlite3 under the hood. Django is a Python-based web framework meant for rapid prototyping. Here in India, high schoolers learn web development using Django. Caching is a design paradigm to reduce expensive access to either your disk or to the network. sqlite3 is a great choice for reducing network latency. For small websites like even sqlite3, even sqlite.org, SQLite3 is used under the hood for serving traffic. For data scientists, analysis results can be shared by using SQLite. So you can go ahead and mail your SQLite3 database to your colleague or friend, and they can combine your results along with theirs seamlessly to see the output. IoT stands for Internet of Things. So these sensors collect measurements, say like your room temperature or the humidity. One thing that you'll notice is these sensors are often low powered. They usually don't have a power supply associated with them to keep them going for a long time. So it is important to keep the memory and the storage footprint to the minimum, along with the power consumption, of course. So SQLite3 comes into play here. IoT sensors store data locally on their node, and periodically you would reach out to those sensor nodes and get a dump of the data. As far as enterprise applications are concerned, SQLite3 is used as a drop-in replacement in the case of the testing domain. Having seen where SQLite3 is widely used, let us now see why you might not want to use SQLite3 in your projects. Here are a couple of limitations. Only row level triggers are supported. There is no support for statement level trigger. Consider a table with 10 rows, and let's just say that you deleted 5 rows. In the case of a row level trigger, your trigger callback would get invoked 5 times because you deleted 5 rows. Whereas in the case of a statement level trigger, there would be exactly one callback to your trigger. So this is where SQLite3 is different from a bunch of the usual relational database management systems. Views are read-only. So once you create a view, you cannot write to the view directly. You can work around it by having a trigger to give an illusion to the end user that views are writable, but by default, views are read-only. Write and full outer joins are not supported. Alter table operations are restricted to renaming a table, adding a column, and renaming a column. So if you're reading this right, you cannot remove a column. You have to go through an upgrade path wherein you back up your data or basically create a new table without the columns that you want in place, and then swap the tables out. That is, remove the original table and then rename the new table. Concurrent access supports multiple readers and exclusive writers on the whole database. So if you are performing a GET request, say on the database via your HTTP, then a reader is something that doesn't change the state of the server, whereas a writer is something that is going to change the state of the database. As an example, if you were to retrieve the names of students from the table, then it is basically a read access. A write, on the other hand, involves either creating a new student, updating an existing student's record, or deleting a student. So here, one thing to notice is that the lock happens across the entire database. So the concurrency is not at the level of row or table. This is one of the primary reasons why it is not suited for big websites. To summarize, stay away from SQLite when you have a lot of concurrent writers. If your data is unlikely to fit on a single disk, so if you're dealing with a big data problem wherein you have terabytes of data, odds are slim that it will fit into your single disk partition. So stay away from SQLite on such scenarios. And if your application needs to connect to a database across a network and you want special client-side processing even at the library end, stay away from SQLite. Here's our setup. We'll be using Ubuntu 18.04 with all the updates installed. Use this command to install SQLite3. Since we are using sudo, if the system requests you for the root password, please provide it. To verify installation, type this on your prompt and the SQLite3 shell should print something out for you. If you're looking for a graphical user interface, install SQLite browser by using this command. If you're planning to use SQLite3 and other databases for your production purposes, I'd recommend using a tool called DataGrip by JetBrains. For the source, here's where you can get it. I've already installed sqlite3, but here's the command. sqlite3-version produces this output for me. So that's about it as far as getting your environment set up. So turns out that the version of sqlite3 that comes along with the Ubuntu distribution is outdated, version 3.22. So you can see that .22.0 is what ships with it, and when you did your version check, you must have noticed the same version number. Before installing the new version of sqlite3 from the source code, go ahead and remove the existing version using this command. apt remove -y sqlite3 will remove the existing sqlite3 distribution from your Ubuntu box. If prompted for your root password, please provide it. So turns out that the version of sqlite3 that comes along with the Ubuntu distribution is outdated, version 3.22. So you can see that .22.0 is what ships with it, and when you did your version check, you must have noticed the same version number. Here's the source code that I grabbed from the SQLite website. It's attached with the resources as well. So grab it, unzip it in a folder, get into that folder and run the following commands. The first one is before you run the commands, make sure you have installed two more scripts. So the first one is this one. So make sure you install tclsh and build essential. Build essential will grab make and all the utilities for you. So make sure you install these. After that, run /configure. It's going to print a lot of text for you, and eventually once it's done, run make. Do not provide any flags like make j8 to parallelize your build. Just run make. Mine is done, but just to give you a demo, it's going to take probably a minute or two. We'll just wait and see. Almost done here. There we go. So the next step, which is of course optional, is you can go ahead and run make install. So if you run your .sqlite3 version, you'll notice that the version is now 3.29.0. This is the version that we want to use. Few things to keep in mind. You can either include this binary in your path variable or do something that's that I'd do. Just run a sudo make install and it'll just create all the symbolic links in the necessary folders and you're good to go. So this completes the update of SQLite. The last part is to install a shell called Terminator. Terminator is an alternative to the existing GNOME shell that ships with Ubuntu. The reason for installing Terminator is, turns out in SQLite 3.29, new lines are not interpreted properly, so it will lead to bugs when you try to type queries that span across multiple lines. To overcome that, use this command to install Terminator. After that, once you open Terminator, it'll look like this, and you can then go ahead and issue SQLite 3 to start working on it.